Today on Crooked Mustache, we've got the brand new 2021 Toyota Corolla SE, the first Corolla with a shot in the arm in 10 years. Stay tuned. Now, I've borrowed this car from Toyota of Hollywood, one of the largest volume dealers in South Florida. With a huge selection of new and pre-owned vehicles, they're sure to have the next car for you. Be sure to reach out to Sandra Molina over at Toyota of Hollywood and let her know Crooked Mustache sent you. Link in the description. Now we'll start with a quick overview. The Toyota Corolla is a staple of the compact car class, selling millions of units over the years. It is one of the greatest selling units in history. Toyota has made and sold over 230 million vehicles since it was founded over 80 years ago, with over 20% of those being Corollas. Think about it. 1 out of every 5 Toyotas ever sold was a Corolla. Now, the most popular and widely known Corolla by far has to be the little panda colored Trueno that rose through pop culture thanks to a little anime called Initial D, where it was the hero car known for drifting and delivering tofu. Now, after the 8.6, there weren't really any Corollas worth mentioning during the 90s. We had your basic models, but we finally got something interesting back in 2006 when Corolla unleashed the XRS, a variant of the Corolla which came with the Celica GTS 1.8 liter engine and 6-speed manual, putting down around 170 horsepower. And since then, we haven't had another one until now, when, given the Corolla, you're spoiled for choice with everything you can get these days. But before we look under the hood, let's head inside. So from the moment you sit down in the new Corolla, you're greeted by a much nicer interior than the previous generation. From the simple cluster up front, you get 4 dials. You have your speedo, your tach, coolant, and fuel gauge simplified there, along with your driver information screen. Now, I have seen the cluster on the XSE and hybrids, and those have a little bit more of a Romulan look to them, much more digital, even though they're still needled gauges, with a big center display in the speedo. Again, it's going to be take your pick on what you want. Now, the steering wheel is roughly the same one that you get in the Sienna, but this one does feel nicer in the hands. I like the way that they have basically all the same controls that you had on the Sienna, but it doesn't look as chunky. It's little style, little touches that make you feel like this was made for your car. Now, moving over to the infotainment screen, I like the fact that this one actually does utilize one of the few things that I disliked about the Sienna. They've tried to go for smaller bezels. The Sienna screen felt much larger because they were trying to occupy the same space from the screen that's available. This one actually feels like it has relatively smaller bezels, even though you still have the touch buttons and the sides. Now, one of the trade-offs, I know that there are people that actually don't like this tablet-esque look on these dashboards, but there are a few positive trade-offs. By allowing the screen to be separate from the dash, it allows a lower dash line. Consequently, what that also offers as a trade-off is it moves the infotainment screen up further into the driver's field of view and line of sight, making it easier to access when you're driving without being too much of a distraction. Now, one of the cascade effects of that is that it also moves up the AC controls. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So you get a knob. They seem to have changed it. So you get a knob for everyone's temperature, and then you get 2 buttons to control where the air hitting you comes from, where it goes to, and a knob to control how hard it blows. Turn it up to 11. Actually, it only goes up to 7 settings, from low to high. It's still cool, you know, having a knob to actually control something. Now, moving down, this is the SE model. If this were the XSE, here's where you would find your Qi charging pad, your heated seat controls. I do like something interesting. From my view, I can't see it, but they've hidden the infotainment interface connections for the phone, otherwise known as your aux port and USB connection, out of the way. What I also like about where they've located is they haven't put a door or a cover on it. Frankly, I think if they put one on it, one day in a hurry, rushing out from work, you grab your cable, you're likely to rip off whatever cover was there anyways. So it's a nice feature, basically preventing damage to the car. Now, moving further down into the console, one of the things I like about this dash is it's taken some inspiration from the previous generation RAV4, which I wasn't a fan of because of the knee pad effect, but they've done a much better job in this one. They've actually moved any controls for the car, like your sport button, traction control button, down towards the shifter where they're actually easily accessible. Now we've got what appears to be the same shifter from the Camry, which has the negative trade-off of being backwards like other Toyota shifters. You shift up by pushing forward, you shift down by pulling back. However, because this is an SE, we've also got paddles. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what that CVT, or actually DCVT, feels like combined with this 2-liter engine. More on that later. That was fast.
Put the bass on.
So apparently, if you want even more kick out of your system, there's an optional JBL sound system that will blow your mind apparently. The stock system is incredible. Really impressed. Let's move on to the back seats. And now in the event that you're the taller member of your family and you're the poor soul that has to sit back here, it's not completely uncomfortable, but it is worth mentioning that I do fit with the seats in a comfortable position up front where I would still be able to fit in front. Headroom is about the same as the Camry. I do feel a little bit claustrophobic simply because I'm a big dude. In terms of children, I think that we'd have no problem seating 3 children back here. Now, being that this is a compact class car, the back seat is pretty sparse. There is no rear seat AC. There's no rear seat USB power in this model. There's a little cubby hole. Each window has express down and express up, even in the passenger level. You do get an armrest, which, believe it or not, considering the fact that there are actually cars that don't include an armrest or cup holders, and in this case you actually get 2 here plus 1 on each door. If you've never sat in the back of a car with no armrest, there's just nothing to put your hand on, so it feels slightly awkward. But that said, this is a compact car and it's actually quite comfortable. I feel safe. Actually loving the black headliner to go with the white and black interior. One thing worth mentioning that I did want to talk about. Now, if anyone who's ever owned a child, anyone who's ever had a child is going to know, one of the most frustrating things in life is installing a car seat. Now, actually something I love about some cars is, while they do hide the anchor points, you know, it looks nice, it doesn't do anything when you actually need to install the car seat. You destroy your seat trying to put it in, you pinch your fingers when you find it the wrong way, and you end up putting the hook between, you put your finger between the hook and the loop in the back. I actually like here how they've basically made little covers, little plastic surrounds that actually have the covers exposed. And I'm telling you right now, you don't feel them when you're sitting on them. And this is nice. This will actually save your interior in the event you're poking and prodding around while you're trying to install a car seat. Imagine a guy my size in here on top of a car seat. This is a welcome assistance. Now behind you, you've got the ubiquitous 60/40 folding split rear seats, which are releasable from inside the car. And now we're going to move on to what is actually a rather spacious trunk. So before we move on to the rest of the car, we're going to talk about cargo space. Now at 13 cubic feet, this is not the biggest trunk in its class. It competes pretty much with the Mazda 3 in terms of size, with the Civic and the Sentra having slightly larger trunks. But realistically, I prefer the actual sedan looks rather than the fastback S look of those compact cars, and you're really only getting 1 or 2 more cubic feet of space. Back here, there's plenty of room for a check bag, 2 overnight bags, more than enough storage for a car of this size. Also, while we're back here, we can talk about the looks. Now, this being the SE, there are a few different changes from the L, the LE, and the XLE. With the SE, you get the honeycomb grills front and back here on the rear valence. You get this faux, yes it is, but it still looks cool, diffuser at the back, along with this twin-tipped exhaust. And we have to admire the small touch of a lip spoiler. Now going down the side, one of the things that caught my attention about the SE first was these 18-inch wheels that really fill the wheel arches beautifully. And I love how they match these muscled out wheel arches. I mean, it really does look like a touring car. I really wish we had touring car racing over here, but that's another video. Moving on, you get blacked out side skirts. And then if we move on to the front, I really have to say I love these lights. This angled thing and these weird shaped lights has been going on for years, but I think Toyota finally got it on this one. The coolest part is that although this is the SE front end with the fog lights and the honeycomb grille, the LE actually still shares a lot of the same looks, minus the extensions of the grille on the side. I really do love the way this Corolla looks. It's what it should have looked like years ago. Now, as I promised earlier when I was inside, we talk about what's under the hood of this thing. Now, for the first time in over 10 years, the Corolla has something worth talking about, or at least worth upgrading to if you're not planning on getting the base model car. Under the skin of this new Corolla, you've got two engine options. You get the okay 1.8 liter, 139 horsepower, 121 pound-feet of torque engine, or you can have this one. This is the 2-liter VVTi dynamic force engine producing 169 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. Now, I'm pleasantly surprised that they haven't thrown an engine cover on this. It actually felt weird, but I kind of like seeing the engine. It's there. Why do you have to have a plastic cover on it? Now, mated to this engine is Toyota's new DCVT 10-speed transmission. It's the first of its kind. Now, the TLDR of the DCVT is this. A standard CVT transmission is just that. It's the two cones with the little chain in the middle that connects them that basically makes the system a continuously variable transmission, and it can simulate speeds. Toyota has taken the Achilles heel of the CVT and solved it. One of the places CVT transmissions suffer the most is low-speed stop-and-go traffic. Toyota solved that by giving the car a physical first gear, basically erasing that problem. Once it shifts into the next gear, you're on the CVT. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what it feels like, because a CVT transmission is technically the fastest way to have a car accelerate. So we'll have to see on our drive. Speaking of, what am I waiting for? All right, so here we go. We are driving, we're driving the Corolla SE. So I'm really eager to see what this dynamic force engine feels like. I know it's only 170 horsepower, but the Corollas haven't had that much power in over 10 years. So, and matched with this gearbox, which CVT is the only reason that Honda can claim that 0 to 60 in 6 and a bit seconds in their Civic Si. It just happened that this turned out to be a nice corner. Now in auto mode, I'm trying to force the transmission to change its mind as we go through this turn. Now, even though it is a CVT, it feels a little bit more natural. It feels more like a standard gearbox because it's simulating those other gears. And I like the feeling of it actually shifting. So now let's put it in sport mode and see how it feels actually driving. Now I've also got a decibel-o-meter app running on my phone so that we can take a listen, and I'll have it here showing on screen. So I'll hold it up so that we can take a listen to see what the car sounds like at different points. On the highway. Okay. Actually felt pretty punchy there. And it does seem that it won't auto shift for you, which I do like. Took the earbud out of my ear. I'm making sure that I'm coming across loud and clear. Okay, if we can get up to a cruising speed, what I'd consider 60 miles an hour. There you go, there's 60 miles an hour. I'll stop talking. Can't see the screen. $70, that's pretty quiet. I know it's not a DSG, but this feels pretty instant. It's definitely quicker than the transmission that was in the Camry we tested a few months ago. That had a standard 8-speed auto with a torque converter. This is the CVT, and this is, I shouldn't say ferocious, but this is, well, actually I guess compared to that it kind of is. So that's the 2021 Toyota Corolla SE. There's a lot to say about this thing. Now, when it comes to the Corolla, you've got every flavor you could possibly want, from the standard L if you're just looking for everyday transportation, all the way up to the Apex Edition XSE if you want the fully loaded, every option possible Corolla. I think the SE is the perfect balance of both, especially because you get that 10-speed transmission, or you can have the manual if you prefer 3 pedals, plus that 2-liter engine. It's the first time in years that the Corolla has actually been something sporty. I don't know if they're ever going to make something to compete on the lines of the GTI or the Civic Si, but at least for now we've got something that reminds you the Corolla has a heartbeat of sportiness. I'm Alfred for Crooked Mustache. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Oh my God. The man's wheel has fallen off.